Hello and welcome to Gut Shot, home of the hottest takes for Magic the Gathering. I'm Will, and joining me as always is Frederick.
Hello, I'm Frederick, your co-host for Gut Shot, the only Magic the Gathering podcast that is funny if you roll a nat 20.
Fred, how's it going today?
Pretty all right. Had a canoe trip with my dad on Saturday. That was pretty nice. 4th of July sucks. I hate America. I hate fireworks. It's just a bad time in general. But yeah, doing pretty good. Got to play some Modern. Went 3-0 this past weekend with my new Teamer mid-range list. I just want to get some games in against Domain Zoo. That's the only thing. Then the guy who played it the previous week wasn't there last week, but I'm really excited to play against that. But yeah, I'm really loving the list. Really glad that I built it. Speaking of lists we're glad we built, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing well. Congratulations on your sweep. Having a good 4th of July weekend. You know, went and saw some fireworks. I'm not super into them, but they're important to my girlfriend, so they're important to me. But something that I have not been able to get off my mind are these new Magic spoilers for the new set, Dungeons & Dragons, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that today.
So, before we get started, what are your... Oh, sorry. Like and subscribe. And also comment, but pretend that I said this in an organic way that made sense with the flow of the episode.
Everybody, thank you for listening to Gut Shot. It really does mean a lot to us every single time you tune in. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like the video if you like it. The bell icon's there if you want notifications, and subscribe for more of that juicy Gut Shot content. And more than anything, we want to hear what you have to say. What are your thoughts on the cards that we picked as our most exciting cards that we're really looking forward to for the new set? Do you agree with us, disagree with us? Let us know and leave a comment on YouTube below, or you can tweet at us at GutShotPod, and I'm definitely interested in reading any comments or tweets that we get on the air. So that being said, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. I don't believe the set is completely spoiled, but we've seen almost all of it, and I feel that we can confidently look at what's been spoiled and pick out top 10 for both of us, cards that we are most excited about. Overall, how are you feeling about this set? Did you have to kind of dry the well, so to speak, or are there just tons of cards that you want to talk about, Fred?
I think this is not like Moho 2 where we would need to make 2 episodes. I would say that 10 was like the perfect number for me to pick. Okay. I liked a couple of the cards that you picked too, but I don't think I could do another episode like we did with Moho 2. But I am more excited for the set than I thought that I would be. Will, what's your relationship to D&D? Are you a D&D person? Have you played a lot of D&D?
I have played a little bit. So I would say I'm still in like an introductory phase, but I've played a game or two over time. I think my first introduction was a 3.5. So a lot of my base knowledge of D&D comes from buying that player's handbook and reading it by myself, but never actually being able to play a game because I didn't have anybody to play. But I've done a couple of campaigns. I remember doing one that was in 4th edition, and I think I've done like the beginning of like 2 in 5th edition, which is the current edition, and also I think like the most popular Dungeons and Dragons edition there's been ever. I don't know, but I know that the current 5th edition has been just a runaway success. So there are a lot of references in the set that I don't get, but there's actually quite a few that I do get. So it is fun for me to look at the cards and get those references that I get. What is your experience with D&D, Fred?
I've played a little bit of D&D. I've DM'd a little bit of D&D, but none of it was set in the D&D like universe with like the D&D lore. It was always like homebrew adventures using the D&D engine, so I'm not attached to the D&D lore at all. I'm more of a homebrew tabletop guy, like over Discord or just like in person. Back in the before times, I did really enjoy like playing homebrew tabletop games and like indie tabletop games and stuff. But I think the D&D engine is a little bit like, I think its popularity snowballed, and that's what's caused it to become the biggest tabletop game when there's like other engines that run better. But I will say my dad was super into Baldur's Gate for a little while, so I got all the cards that were references to Baldur's Gate.
Mhm.
He liked the PC game a lot, and I would watch him play it when I was a kid. I I don't have an attachment to the D&D lore, so the cards that I like are not because I'm like soy facing over them because they're a reference to D&D. It's because I think they're cool Magic cards that'll be fun to play with.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
do.
yeah, that tracks for you, and that's really surprising to hear that like you're like into tabletop games in the way that you mentioned. I don't think I really knew that about you.
Yeah, I really love them. I love Monster of the Week, especially, is a really fun one. And then just anything I can like get into. I haven't gotten to in a while, but yeah, I've played quite a bit of homebrew tabletop games, and I do really enjoy them. I'm always looking for more opportunities to play those. But yeah, not a big D&D guy. I will say one of my probably my favorite thing about this set is the sort of one-off ability words. I think it would. I'm convinced now fully that it would be really cool for Magic to just use their italics like flavor text at the beginning of card abilities to give them names. I think that would be a really cool flavor thing, and that's a tool that I really hope they use going forward since they've used it in this set. And I guess we'll point to it when we get to the first card that does that in our spoilers. But that is something that I really love. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Oh yeah, I like them. I really like the implementation of it in this set, and we'll see a number of cards that do that really well. Speaking of tabletop games, I'm actually okay. So I'm a huge weeb. If you listen to my other podcast, Disc Dandies, you know this about me. I'm a big Konosuba fan, and there is a tabletop RPG that was developed and released in Japan that is getting an English like a physical release, I believe in October. And I think that I want to see if I can get some sort of like online, a D&D like game in the Konosuba tabletop game. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah. So that's my experience with tabletop games. I think that this set, and I'll talk about this a little bit once we get to the end of the list, but I think that this set does do a good job of transposing D&D tropes, abilities, flavor onto Magic cards. With all that being said, would you like to move on and just talk about what cards we're excited about?
Yes, I would. And you've got the first one. Infect has a new toy.
No, not quite, not quite. I don't think this card is super powerful, but like you were saying, using the ability words to invoke flavor. I picked this card because I think it's a cool limited type card that does this really well. This is Choose Your Weapon. It is a 3 mana green instant, so 2 generic and 1 green. It's an uncommon, and this is one of those cards. You'll see this a couple of times in the set where it is a modal card where the whole point of the card is for you to choose options, and these are flavored kind of how you would make choices in a game of D&D. So you choose one out of 2 options. 2 weapon fighting, and that's the ability text there. 2 weapon fighting, double target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. Or you could choose archery. This spell deals 5 damage to target creature with flying. I think that this having these cards that kind of emulate like branching pathways choices that you would make in D&D, I think that this is a really cool implementation with that ability text, or ability keyword flavor text, however you want to call it. And that's the problem with cards that have narrow choices like this one. 5 damage to target creature with flying. That's a good sideboard card, but you wouldn't really put that into a main deck tuned draft deck. But by having that choice, that flexibility, it makes it more likely to be an inclusion in the main deck in your draft deck. So I think that this card is just a good confluence of like a number of cool things, both D&D flavor and applications in limited environments. How do you feel about this card, Fred?
Yeah, I think so from a flavor perspective, I think it's amazing. I love this flavor. I love the art too. I feel kind of sorry for the guy in the art because if he chooses 2 weapon fighting, the dragon's going to eat him, and if he chooses archery, those 2 Jabrani's are going to gang up on him. But I love this card flavorfully, like you said. I think I would say like this card is probably card 19 or 20 when you're building your draft deck. Not every deck is going to want them, but you're not going to scoff at this. This is going to win some bullshit games, and it's going to keep you safe if your opponent pulled one of the 5 mythic dragons or one of the uncommon dragons. There's a lot of dragons in the set in every color, so this 5 damage to a flying creature is a little bit better than it is in most sets, I would say. But yeah, I would evaluate the card probably similarly to you. I think it does make it into a lot of green limited decks, especially like in sealed. I don't know where you'd pick it in draft, but yeah, I think it is a cool flavor, and like you said, like emulating the choices of D&D. I think this is better though because it's in a way that fits better with Magic. I don't like the ones that are like you happen across a dead body or whatever, like that are read out like DM instructions. I think that breaks the immersion a little bit, but I think this one handles it really well. I really like this card.
Okay, yeah. I just think that this is a good example of good design choices that the R&D team made while making this set. So that being said, what is your first card you want to talk about?
I'm excited about this card. It's a good white card. I think the name's a little silly. I know this is from like Forgotten Realms or Baldur's Gate or something, but Icing Death, it just sounds like it's talking about the kind of icing that goes on a cake or a cookie. I can't really like separate it from that in my head. But this is Icing Death Frost Tyrant, 2 and double white for a mythic 4/3 legendary dragon with flying and vigilance, and when it dies, create Icing Death Frost Tongue, a legendary white equipment artifact token with equipped creature gets +2/0, and whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls, and equip 2. So this is a decent body. Think like Brunhilde from this is never mind. That's a stupid reference that doesn't really make much sense. Okay, this is a 4/3 flying vigilance for 4. That's above rate for limited. Might even see a little bit of standard play. The fact that it gives you that equipment when it dies is really cool. If this is your top end for an aggressive deck, you're going to get a really awesome equipment to slap on one of your good creatures after this dies. I think it's flavorful. You kill the dragon, you get or the dragon dies, you get its tongue as a sword. That's kind of metal. And it's just a good card, great rate, does a lot. I like it.
This reminds me a lot of Dark Souls. I don't know if you've played a lot of Dark Souls, but I have been forced recently to play a lot of Dark Souls. And a lot of the bosses, I mean, this just looks like a Dark Souls boss, but a lot of those bosses, if you like are able to attack its tail a lot, its tail will fall off and turn into a weapon. And a lot of the bosses have like weapons that are like attached or that weapons that are a part of like that boss. So basically if you cut off the tail, you get a weapon that is like a representation of the tail being turned into a weapon or some other things. So this is exactly that on a Magic card. So that's a cool thing there. You're absolutely right. This is just a good rate. Get you a card that gets you equipment that is useful after it dies. And I'm sure that even though the name's a little silly, I'm sure that there are players who would be very excited to see this card or this character represented on a card. And it just seems like a good card. You would never feel bad being able to play this. I think it's a good card.
Yeah, this is somebody's waifu. I have not played a lot of Dark Souls, but what you're describing basically happens in Monster Hunter too. And that's kind of like the vibe that I got. So yeah, I could see that. I haven't played much Souls-like. They're too frustrating. I like hard games, but only ones that I'm immediately good at. And that was not the case for Dark Souls.
That tracks for you.
It. Yeah, I respect it. But yeah, I think this card's really cool. I'm glad they made it. So you've got this next card. This is probably the closest thing to a spike card that we've listed, right? How do you tell us about this card?
I think so. So one of the things I love about Magic is that we have such a deep lexicon that we use to talk about our games, and a lot of stuff like slang that we use for certain types of game actions will be named after cards that are iconic for doing that thing. One of those is the idea of wishing. And a wish in Magic is a card that lets you get a card of some type from quote outside the game and then put it into your hand. And in tournament settings, that means your sideboard. In casual, you can kind of do just whatever you want. But we've seen a number of wishes over the years that have different parameters. We are finally getting kind of the just base wish here. The card is actually just called Wish. It is a 3 mana red sorcery. So 2 generic, 1 red. you may play a card you own from outside the game this turn. Now, it's a little different because you don't search the card and put it into your hand. You do actually have to play the card. So I'm not going to say that this is like better than all the wishes, but it kind of is the most base out of all of them. There's no restriction on what the card is. It can be anything. It does, you do have to play it that turn, so keep that in mind. But I like the idea that we got all these different wishes and we kind of have the base wish here, and it kind of makes sense. There's a bard character in the art. I think that's pretty flavorful. I don't want to speak to competitive applications because I don't know that, but I just like how they were like, okay, let's just make the base wish. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's taken a really long time for them to make this. I do really like when they turn magic slang into cards. Will, I have a question for you. So we know my favorite magic slang. Discarding cards from the top of your own deck is greasing your hair back. Creatures dealing damage to each other is rumbling. Magic slang. What are your favorite magic slangs? What are your favorite words that Magic players have come up with to represent game actions?
I am still trying to figure out what Mise means. Does anyone know what Mise means? I think I think it's like a huge practical joke that all Magic players are playing on me because they keep saying the word Mise, and I have absolutely no idea what it means. I think everybody's just trying to make fun of me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Whenever like I get a judge call, they always tell me to put on deodorant, but I don't know if that's like, is that an equipment spell or I don't know. Sometimes they send me home, so I feel like this has gone beyond Magic slang. But no, I have no idea what the fuck Mise means.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right, Fred, why don't you tell us about the next card that you're excited about?
Yeah, so this is Trellisara, Silvermoon Dancer. Now, unfortunately, there's not an English image of this card, but I'll just tell you what it does, and you guys can just take my word for it. Trellisara Moon Dancer is green and a white for a 2/2 legendary elf rogue cleric. Fuck. The important thing is, whenever you gain life, scry 1 and put a +1/+1 counter on Trellisara. This is legendary and it's 2 colors, but it's a better Ajani's Pridemate. It's not limited to once per turn like they've been doing with the life gain trigger effects lately. This card's really strong, and I think it might make modern green-white Soul Sisters a thing, or at least fit into like the Heliod Company value decks. And if not that, then at least like Pioneer might like this. This card's probably gonna be fine in draft. Just the scrying on top of the counter that Ajani's Pridemate normally gets is huge in my opinion. And like it's gonna, I don't know. I think it's gonna help those decks that kind of like those life gain decks tend to kind of struggle with drawing too many lands in the late game. Like it'll just kind of kill you because you don't have any way to get out of it. So I feel like this will really help with that. And I just think it's a cool card. I think it's a very strong card. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's interesting that they're power creeping Ajani's Pridemate, as they do here. I am curious to see how this will actually be implemented because Soul Sisters, I think for the most part, just wants to be mono white. If they do a green splash, it would have to be a very light splash. I could see them maybe wanting like 2 of these. But I mean, I think they rather just have the full 4 Pridemates because you just want to play as many as you can get. But the scry is really big game. I could see like Soul Sisters doing like a light green splash for this, and then maybe like Collected Company or something like that, because they can get the what's her name, the Queen from Throne of Eldraine, double white, gain life creature attacks. You can get that off of a Collected Company, and can you get Heliod off of Collected Company as well?
You can, yes. That's why the Heliod Company deck is so good.
Okay, yeah. I think that would be a good way to see that deck move forward. But I mean, this is just a good card. It is the legendary kind of. I mean, obviously, lowers the power a little bit. But I am curious to see how decks that want this effect are going to incorporate it. It's interesting because the parameters of it kind of make those decks. It's not just automatic slot in. It evolves the deck a little bit. So that will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, the two other things I wanted to say about this are like Soul Sisters might go in a more green direction because you got to remember there is a green Soul Sister. There is Essence Warden.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, it was a time shifted card, and that might, you know, I don't know if this is enough to push the deck over the edge into just white green, but that's worth mentioning at least. I feel. And then the other thing would be, this is the first time in a long time it feels like they've put legendary on a card specifically pretty clearly to say like you can't control two of these instead of just basically a line of text that says this can be your commander, and we're not really worried about the impact it will have on other formats. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like most of the
Yeah.
cards that they've put legendary on, it's been so that someone can make them their commander. But this one genuinely feels like it's a restriction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. It is uh it's good design that the legendary clause both actually does great things for constructed design while also allowing Soul Sisters players to add a have a relevant commander that adds a color that those players might want to, and can has a use beyond Heliod, because I bet, you know, like right now anybody that's doing Soul Sisters in the commander format is using Heliod as their commander, and that makes sense. But you know, you get a different take on it if you want to use this as your commander as well and get a color. But yeah, you're right that the legendary clause is pulling double duty there, and that's good design.
Yeah. So, departing from good design, tell us about this next card.
So this is the first class enchantment that we've seen so far. These were spoiled, previewed very late. So like I think we've seen all of them now, but like we went the first couple of days of spoiler season without knowing about these. So a lot of the classic D&D classes have an enchantment that basically allow you to play the enchantment, and as a player kind of get abilities that are reminiscent of that class. There are a bunch of them for all the major D&D classes. I've picked the monk class here. When I play D&D, the monk class is the class that I usually go for to play. And I just like this card. I think it does a great job of articulating what the monk class does in D&D. So these look a lot like sagas, as you can see on the screen, but they're a little different, and they're very reminiscent of the level up mechanic in some ways, and different in some ways too. So when you play the enchantment, it stays in play, and it has a base ability. However, each of these classes have levels to them, and there is a mana cost associated with moving to that level. But unlike level up, where you pay costs and you get level up counters, and then once you get the a certain amount of counters, you get certain abilities. This is basically you pay the cost, you go up a level. There are no counters involved. You are just permanently at that level, and this class enchantment permanently has whatever that level ability is. So enough about the class enchantments. The monk class is two colors. It's Azorius, so one white and one blue. The base ability is the second spell you cast each turn costs one generic less to cast. So for those of you that are familiar with the monk in D&D, the idea is that if they fight unarmed, just like with their fist or with like a simple monk weapon, their abilities allow them to get multiple of these weaker attacks in. So they're, you're hitting them 4 or 5 times with your fist, where a fighter or something is only getting 1 or 2 swings with their whatever weapon they're using. So that is reminiscent of that. If you pay the exact same cost, so 1 white, 1 blue, you go up to level 2, and then this is not a stack ability, it's a triggered ability. When this class becomes level 2, return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. And all of these levels are at sorcery speed, so you can't do this at instant. But you go up to level 2, you return, you bounce one of your opponent's non-land permanents, which I think also is, monks are very agile, they're very acrobatic, I was gonna say aerobic, but athletic. Yeah, athletic. So that is kind of reminiscent of that as well. You pay that cost, you bounce something, and then you can just keep flurry of blows at him. And then one more level. This is level 3. 1 generic, 1 white, 1 blue. So 3 mana total. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. For as long as it remains exiled, you may cast this card from exile as long as you've cast another spell this turn. So it in reality like gets you an extra card each turn, so like a one-sided Howling Mind that wants you to just keep playing spells over and over again. So it's like a flurry of unarmed blows in overdrive and netting you cards. I don't feel I can speak to constructed applications of this card. I'm sure there is a good deck that could be built with this. I just love how this is very reminiscent of what the monk class does in D&D, and I just think this is a really cool implementation. How do you feel about this card in particular, Fred?
Finally, Volcells in Magic.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm a little less high on it than you are. I feel like if the bottom mode said play instead of cast, it'd probably be a little bit better. But as it stands, if it exiles a land, you can't play it. I wish that they had found a way. These like leveling up enchantments, these enchantments that you can pay to sort of upgrade later in the game, are a really cool idea, and I wish they'd tied them less to D&D flavorfully. I don't want this to be a Bushido issue. You know what I mean? Where they've got a cool mechanic that has a lot of room to grow, but they've tied it to something flavorfully that makes it difficult to reprint in the future. And that's my worry with these classes, because I think this is such a neat idea, and I love most of the class cards. Monk is probably my second favorite behind the one that I picked, which we'll see later. But yeah, I think these have a lot of design space. I think this one in particular is cool. It's evocative of what a monk does in D&D. Even I know enough about D&D to know that, yeah, that checks out. This is a cool card. I like it a lot, and I'm glad you picked it. I might have picked it if you didn't. I don't know.
It is. I love the card. I don't know if I would want to play a deck that uses this at its full potential. That's not really the kind of deck that I like to play. But maybe there's like a heroic type deck that would like to use this. Maybe like a Jeskai Feather or something like that could make good use of this. But I am very curious to see how this plays out. I think that I'm kind of on the opposite end of you when it comes to like the growth potential of this ability. Or this card type, the class enchantment. I don't really think there's all that much that can go forward with this, because if you think about classes like like groupings like jobs that a character or a player can have, you can't really go any farther than just D&D classes. It's like what class would you choose that isn't just already a D&D class and isn't already represented by the class cards that we're getting in this set? Like are we going to have like samurai class, or like what's a weird thing like Phyrexian class? It really is just these base like jobs that you would find in any sort of RPG. So I don't mind them kind of blowing their load, so to speak, on all of these class cards in this one set, because I don't see a lot of room for growth in this unless Magic does something very weird with this card type going forward. But I am very excited to hear what class card you picked later.
Yeah, I will say, so what I was kind of trying to get at was, I think these enchantments that upgrade themselves by paying mana shouldn't have been called classes specifically because there's not a lot of room within that, but I think there is a lot of room within enchantments that upgrade themselves based on a mana cost, so long as you don't name them classes. You know what I mean?
That makes a lot of sense. I thank you for clarifying that. I think that makes a lot of sense. However, we have to think if Wizards goes back to this well, they're going to put some weird like set specific spin on it when they do it then. So, if we ever go back to this, it's going to have something weird about it that we have to remember too. So, hopefully they find ways to go back to this and make it more unique and see what else is in this well.
Yeah, hopefully if we ever get a Final Fantasy set, we'll get like a Chocobo Knight class and a member of My Chemical Romance class.
Hey man, but Uncharted Realms, Secret Lair, there are tons of opportunities. I'm just saying, give Secret Lair another chance. You might get what you want.
I will absolutely not. Speaking of not getting what I want, I wish Adult Gold Dragon had one more toughness. This is 3, a red and a white for a 4/3 rare dragon with flying, lifelink, and haste. That's all the text. Go home, folks. Very good card, except that it dies to Bolt. I think this card will be fine. I just like creatures that have like 3 keywords and trying to evaluate how good they are. The Baneslayer Angels of the world, and I think this is a good example of that kind of design. How do you feel about Adult Gold Dragon?
Yeah, like a Mantis Rider, which I think has these exact keywords on it.
Flying Vigilance Haste. I wish it had lifelink.
Oh, okay, sure. Like Mantis Rider ended up being constructed playable, and people just love that card. You know, like having like these keyword, like it's not really keyword soup, but like a collection of keywords that work really well together and make the card play a lot better than it looks on the surface. People love that. I would absolutely love to open this in any sort of a limited environment and just slam it down. It's exactly what I want to be doing. In terms of constructive playability, I mean, Gold Vein Dragon has to leave before this has any chance, right?
Yeah, Gold Span Dragon.
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, unfortunately, I do not think this is going to be relevant for a while, but maybe in the future we could go back to this if Boros needs a big flying hasty beater like this. I love the art. I love how like shimmery it is. It almost looks like copper more than gold. But yeah, I just this is a card to remember exists in the future.
Oh yeah, I think that's probably where I would land on it as well. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that one. You've got one next that would be like the last thing I would think you would pick.
Oh, okay. So this is the first of the D20 cards. We did not have real dice rolling, like roll a dice, roll a die, and the number you get matters to what happens on the card in the like, oh geez, like what, 27 years that Magic's been around. Don't quote me on that. It's probably not that. But in the many years that Magic has been around, we have never had cards that cared about what you rolled on a die until this set. And this is really the set to bring that back. You know, like rolling a d20 is so integral to Dungeons and Dragons. It would be insane to have a Dungeons and Dragons set that does not have rolling d20s. And we have a lot of cards that have this mechanic on them, and I like this one. It is Treasure Chest. It is a 3-mana artifact. It is a rare. It doesn't do anything on the field. It just sits until you pay 4 generic mana and sacrifice Treasure Chest to roll a d20. And if you've ever looked at a D&D book, whenever you get like dice tables. There might be a technical term for it, but if something happens, you roll a die, and depending on what number you get, there are like tiers of what happens, and we are getting those on Magic cards now. So when you roll the d20, depending on the number you get, determines what Treasure Chest is going to do as you're sacrificing it. If you get a 1, which, you know, if you get a 1 in Dungeons and Dragons, it means like it's a critical miss, or like something bad happens. You like fumble and like drop your weapon, or something really bad happens. On this card, if you get a 1, you're trapped and you lose 3 life. So you do nothing. You just lost life. The card was a wash. If you get a 2 through 9, so that is just slightly less than 50% of the times of you rolling the die, you get create 5 treasure tokens. So you have to pay mana to sacrifice Treasure Chest, but you do get a bump in mana available to you with treasure tokens. And there are cards in the set that care about using treasure tokens to cast cards. 10 through 19, so again, just a little bit less than 50% of the card, you gain 3 life and draw 3 cards. And this is the one that most people are going to try to be getting, because, you know, gaining 3 life, drawing 3 cards off of 1 card, that's pretty good for a sorcery an artifact that just sits there. But if you get the critical hit, if you get the nat 20, search your library for a card. If it's an artifact card, you may put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put that card into your hand, then shuffle. So you get Demonic Tutor, or you just get a free artifact if you have one of those in your deck, if you want to play that. So I love the flavor of this card. I love that D20 is coming to Magic. I don't know how it's going to be implemented, you know, throughout the years, but I'm glad to see it in this set. I have another couple of cards that deal with rolling D20, and the question is, do you want to play this trying to get the 20? Is there enough going on in the set to where that is a reasonable goal, or are you just always trying to get that like upper level of what's going on in this card? I don't know about constructed playability, but I do just love the flavor of this card. How do you feel about this card, Fred?
Yeah, the flavor of this card is awesome. I have strong opinions about arbitrarily increasing the amount of RNG in a game. I also think this card is terrible, like from a gameplay perspective, just because like it would barely be standard playable if you always rolled a 20. The 10 through 19 ability is just like harmonized, but you had to pay 3 mana also the previous turn, and you gain 3 life in exchange for it only actually being able to happen half the time. The 5 treasure tokens just gives you back some of the mana that you spent on the card in the first place. So, like, I think this card is pretty awful, but I think you have a no-win scenario when you're trying to design a card that involves rolling a d20, which is that if you design it around what's going to happen on average, then it's going to feel terrible for your opponent, for the player's opponent, every time that you get the 20 result. But if you cost it around it rolling the 20 like it seems like this card has, it's kind of costed as if you're going to roll 20 every time, then the card is just unplayable. So you either have an unplayable card or a card that feels terrible for your opponent, which is why I feel that card games have enough randomness inherent in the deck shuffling already. And I don't think that they need to add rolling a 20-sided die where you have 2 1 in 20 possibilities. I get that this card is flavorful and fun, and I would rather they be costed at a level that they're unplayable than they be good enough to see play in standard, but I'm still, like, I don't find them to be compelling designs. I find them to be a bit, like, I don't know. I find them to be a bit, like, I don't like them very much.
Yeah, that tracks for you. I would have guessed that about you based on other conversations that we've had. Yeah, you seem like you really prefer lower RNG in your games, and I think I would be on the opposite end of that. I like more RNG in my games. I mean, I'm the guy with the coin flip commander deck. You know, I've always been a fan of those types of cards, so it tracks for me that I would like cards like this. I really don't think that any of the dice rolling cards are going to make it to constructed like standard or formats like that other than commander, but yeah, I love the flavor of this, and I just think it's cool that there are cards that kind of increase RNG for me to have fun with, and for also to frustrate you. I imagine if you're playing this set like sealed or draft and you lose to this card, you're really gonna hate it, aren't you?
Yeah, although I think, the losing to this card is kind of predicated on your opponent having a good artifact to grab with the 20 ability, which will not usually happen in limited, so I'm not terribly worried about that. I would be more worried if the card has a really good effect on its own. That would be my concern. Because in limited, like, you have to draft an artifact that's worth this, and I think in that case you'd probably rather just cast it. But I don't like it either way. It would feel awful to lose to this. This is one of my least favorite cards. This might be one of my least favorite Magic cards of all time.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about your next card that you're excited about.
All right, this is Owlbear. Again, not a good English image of this card, but Owlbear is 3 and double green for a creature, bird, bear. 4/4 with trample. And when an owlbear enters the battlefield, draw a card. So this is a very good Pizza Rhino. For those of our listeners who are not aware of what a Pizza Rhino is, there was a card in M19 and then again in M20 that was a Rox that was staring into a sort of scrying pool, and the scrying pool just looked like a hot, melty cheese pizza. So the nickname for the card became Pizza Rhino. It costs 4 and a green for a 4/2 that when it enters draws a card. Very playable in its limited format. It was also a common. But it seems like they've just been printing better and better Pizza Rhinos to give green as their bread and butter common creatures, and I love it. We're talking just 4 to 6 drop creatures that have a decent body and draw you a card when they come in. And a 5-mana 4/4 with trample that draws you a card when it comes in, it doesn't get much better than this. I feel like this is going to be the Professor of Zoomancy of this set. Just the green common that you want literally as many copies of as you can get in your green limited deck.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that this will be a defining card for green in the limited environment. The owlbear has, to my understanding, has a bit of a special place in the hearts of D&D players. Like I know that the owlbear is like really well liked as like an iconic monster in D&D. So it's appropriate that such a liked monster gets a card that is both common, so you'll see it a lot, and also has this high level of limited playability. So yeah, I think this is a great card, a great place to put the owlbear. It would have been really unfortunate if this card was bad, right?
Yeah, or was like a mythic or something. I
Mhm.
think it'll be cool to get to play with this a lot. I love the art, love the card. I'm excited to play with this in limited. I think this might be the best common in the set. But yeah, I'm very excited to play with it. You've got this next one, and I think this is the perfect thing to talk about these sort of flavor words on. But yeah, tell us about Pixie Guide.
Pixie Guide. So I think that this card has already got errata because there's another dice rolling card that kind of gets crazy with this. So this is Pixie Guide. It is a 2 mana 1/3 creature fairy, one generic, one blue. It has flying, so 2 mana 1/3 flying, but its ability grant an advantage. If you would roll one or more dice, instead roll that many dice plus one and ignore the lowest roll. It is blowing my mind that they made Kark's Thumb at common on a creature in the same set that cares about rolling d20. I was like, is this just Kark's Thumb at common on a creature? And it's not quite that, based on the probabilities, which I think makes it safe for this to be something that you can play a lot of and have stack. But like, if you are trying to do anything with dice rolls, this is definitely a card you're going to want to be looking for, and a card that's going to slot into any commander deck that's trying to do anything with dice rolling. So I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out in limited. If you have a lot of dice rolling cards and cards that a number of this card is this creature, which is just a 1/3 flyer for 2. I mean that's below
Yeah, it's
rate,
got a
but it's
body you want to play anyway.
yeah, it's not a terrible body. It's worth consideration. Having multiples of these at common, is that going to push the dice rolling cards over the edge in anything other than just like casual commander? What do you think about this card?
I think no to that. I think it's a good card. It's a good enough card that you would play it in limited anyway. It's going to improve a couple of your dice rolling cards if you want them, but it's a 1/3 flyer for 2, which you're going to take anyway. And I think limited is going to be this card's home. I don't think there's a critical mass of dice rolling cards that would allow a commander deck to be built. Although they are releasing a bunch of commander decks alongside this, so it's possible that we will get one. But I guess good for the players who want that, and I'm happy they're not printing cards that are good enough to make dice rolling a real like standard historic deck, because I don't think it would be fun to play against.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just very curious to see how this is going to play out, and I am wondering if like with a card like this, and then other rolling d20s, I'm thinking about maybe putting some of these cards into my coin flip commander deck, Zinder Split and Ocom. Because there are a number of cards in there that are also kind of mini game cards. Like there's a lot of like fact or fiction type effects. There's Goblin Game. So I'm wondering if that's another like direction I want to go with that deck. So this card really has me thinking about applications for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think it's good that like if a card makes somebody think it's a good card.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, yes, your next card. Oh, so this is the class card that you were talking about. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, this is Ranger class. So the couple times I've played D&D, I've played a druid most of the time. But the Ranger is pretty cool. It's one of my favorite classes in Fire Emblem, although it's pretty much a completely different thing there. But this is Ranger class. It's 1 and a green for a class enchantment. When Ranger class enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. For 1 and a green, you can take it to level 2, where whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. And for 3 and a green, you can take it to level 3. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library, and it's a rare. So, this card's awesome. It's just a 2 mana 2/2, which is already fine. It's good and limited. It's on rate. And then when you take it up to level 2, like even if the 2/2's dead, you have this ability for the rest of the game, basically. I mean, obviously they can destroy your class enchantment, but like just for the rest of the game, getting to put a counter on something every time you attack is huge. It's like a way better exalted, and this enchantment has it. And then for 3 and a green, you sort of get the Nylea effect, where you can look at the top card of your library and you can cast creature spells from it. That's insane. It's a lot of mana investment over the course of the game, but like basically just saying like you get a decent spell, you get a decent effect that this kind of is permanent. As long as you like take a turn off of casting spells, you just spend the mana on this, is awesome, and it comes on a 2-mana 2/2. And of course these enchantments aren't legendary, so like you can play multiple ranger classes, have multiple of the level 2 abilities, and just like every time you swing, put 3+1/+1 counters on a creature. This is great. I think this card's really strong. I think it's evocative of the ranger class, I guess, but I'm more concerned with how fun it's going to be to play with, and I think it's going to be very fun to play with. Great cube card too.
Yeah, it looks like this just if you just want to curve out and just play this as your 2/2 and then just use this as your curving out. It does seem like it plays very well. You brought up an interesting point that you can play multiples of these. I wonder if that's going to cause because this doesn't use counters. I wonder if this is going to cause memory issues in paper play. Is that something that you're concerned about?
No, I mean, I think people are still going to use dice to represent the levels, so I don't think it'll be an issue. Like, the game not technically registering them as counters is important to remember for stuff like Vorinclex or whatever, but, like, people are just going to put a die on there for whatever level it is, and I don't think that's going to be an issue. People can already keep track of how many loyalty all their different planeswalkers have and how many plus one counters all their different creatures have, so I'm not concerned with it.
Okay, sure. That's fair to know. I love this card. Yeah, this definitely seems like the one that I've seen that seems the most like maybe I shouldn't say that. This seems I could see constructed applications for this card.
Yeah, I could too. And if not, it's just going to be one of the best rares in limited.
Yeah, it looks good. I would definitely want to play this in any limited environment.
Yeah. So you've got an interesting one next. This is 50 Feet of Rope. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so earlier we were talking about how the ability words were adding a lot of flavor to this set, and so I thought that this was a flavor home run. If
Absolutely.
You're bringing D&D, if you're bringing D&D to Magic, you have to have rope. So this is 50 feet of rope. It's an uncommon artifact, 1 generic mana, and it has 3. It sits on the ability and has 3 abilities that you can pay mana and tap for. First one, Climb Over. You just tap it, no mana. Target wall can't block this turn. That's pretty cool. Don't know the practical applications of that, but it's there. Tie Up, 3 generic mana and tap. Target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So like a worse Icy Manipulator, but it is there, and that has a lot of good applications. I don't think I need to tell anybody that Icy Manipulator is a good card.
Yeah.
And then Repel Down, 4 generic mana and tap. Venture into the Dungeon, activate only as a sorcery. Is this the first dungeon card that we've talked about?
Yeah, I guess it is. I I don't like the mechanic very much, so it wasn't anywhere on my list. But I think if you're going to do the mechanic, this is the best way to do it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, the venture into the dungeon mechanic is very complicated. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it, but basically certain things in Magic will have you venture into the dungeon, and then there's a token card that you can use, and you basically go through it. There's a number of different rooms, and then once you get to the end of it, you get a pretty good effect, and you have completed a dungeon, which some cards care about. A lot of people are talking about whether venturing into the dungeon will have any application in constructed Magic. People are going to try it, and if you're going to try it, you need very consistent ways to venture into the dungeon. There is another card which I didn't pick, but it's a mana rock that also has an ability like this. You could pay mana, tap it, venture into the dungeon. This is more expensive, but it also has a bad Icy Manipulator attached to it. So if you're going to use this in constructed, you're going to have an ability like this that is repeatable and doesn't require you to do other complicated things. And this is just a flavor home run in terms of bringing D&D to Magic. So that's why I like this card.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I think the legendary that ventures whenever it attacks is another one that has a chance maybe. But yeah, I like this card. It is, like you said, very flavorful. It's probably the most flavorful card in the set. And that Repel Down ability is pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much. I don't have anything new to say about this that you haven't said. I think it's a good card.
Okay, yeah, that's all I gotta say about. Why don't we talk about your next card? This was one of the first cards to be spoiled for the set, right?
Yeah, I would say this is like one of the my highest picks for like being potentially modern playable, or at the very least historic playable. This is Power Word Kill. It's an uncommon instant for 1 and a black. Destroy target non-angel, non-demon, non-devil, non-dragon creature. Those 4 creature types are not only a lot less populous than the creature types that are eliminated by Victim of Night, but this is also 1 and a black, and it's an instant.
Yeah.
So, like, honestly, this feels less restrictive than Doomblade, which saw play forever ago in Modern and hasn't really since. Like, I can't think of any modern. Like, I think the most relevant thing on here is probably Dragon. In terms of modern, there are a couple of dragons that see some modern play. Not really any angels. Not really any demons. Certainly not any devils. Do you think this sees modern play?
I mean, I look at this and I'm thinking cast down, destroy target non-legendary creature. That's the card that I would be looking at. You're right. This is a good play on this kind of upgraded Doomblade that we've been getting recently, where it is restrictive in a way that you have to at least kind of care about, but overall it does almost get everything. Like cast, like there are lots of legendary creatures that see play in multiple different formats. So cast down is not just completely unconditional destroy target creature. This one, I mean, there are I don't really like that list of creature types because I can think of good cards that are of all those. Well, maybe not devil, but angel, demon, dragon. There are cards that see play. Like you said, it's not a lot, but it's enough for me to not really want to play this card. I think that the restriction on this card is more restrictive than it looks on the surface. If I had to choose between those two, I would probably choose cast down.
Really?
But there. Yeah. But I would really not. I wouldn't count this card out, and I wouldn't be surprised that if in an open meta this was the correct choice.
I really think this is better than cast down. Like, what does cast down kill that this doesn't, and what does this kill that cast down doesn't? The only things that cast down kills that this doesn't would be like Stormbreath Dragon, and I think that's it. Honestly, or I guess Glorybringer maybe sees a little bit of modern play. And the things that this kills that cast down doesn't are like Tassiger. Maybe I should have come prepared with more examples, but I think that alone is enough. But I know there's more.
I'm going to listen to you on this. You know more of the current meta than I do, so I'm going to let you. I'm going to let you have this for modern.
Oh, it kills Ragavan too.
Yep, that seems like a good game.
And Asmarano, Martikadist, and Nikoldakar.
Yep.
All right, but you've got this next one. This is a big creature that I would expect you to expect me to want to pick, but I would not expect you to pick.
It has haste, so that really makes me love this
I
card.
didn't notice that. Okay, yeah, no, now I understand. Continue.
Froghemoth. Now we've talked on this podcast before that I'm not really one for those kind of like soy face. We're taking creature types that are like silly together and putting them together on a Simic card. That doesn't really get me, but I do love the way this card reads in terms of gameplay. Froghemoth. It is 5 mana, 3 generic, and 2 green for a creature frog horror. It's a 4/4 and it's rare. It has trample haste, so 5 mana, 4/4 trample haste. Whenever Froghemoth deals combat damage to a player, exile up to that many target cards from their graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on Froghemoth for each creature card exiled this way. You gain 1 life for each non-creature card exiled this way. So it's a weird twist on Scavenging Ooze when it hits your opponent. I don't think you really want to play this thinking that you're going to get a lot of value off of the +1/+1 counters or anything like that, even though that is kind of a good gravy that's on top of this card. I just like it as a 4/4 trample haste for 5 mana in green, and with an ability that they have to kind of care about once it's on the field. I just think this is just a really cool package of a card, and if I was building like any sort of like mono green brawl deck, this is definitely something I would want to slot in there. And I know that there are tons of players that would really love the flavor of this card. Frog Hemoth. There are people that like that kind of silly, we're putting weird creature types together. So I'm glad that this card exists for those players as well. I mean, you're kind of the resident green player here. How do you feel about this card?
So I'm definitely one of those players that soy faces over shit like Shark the Crab. I'll go ahead and admit it. I am not super high on this card. I think you'll see standard play for sure. Just like in those mono green stompy decks. It's a decent sideboard option too, I guess. I don't think it'll see any play outside of there. Maybe it's a decent cube card, but I think you would just rather have Scavenging Ooze, mostly because of the instant speed activation. Klothys is only so good because it's so cheap and impossible to remove, and this does not have those virtues that Klothys has. So I think usually when you're going for Graveyard Disruption in mono green, you're going to just go with Scavenging Ooze because you can force them to try to expend the resources to interact with their own graveyard, and then you can eat it in response, which you just can't do with something that only does it when it attacks or deals combat damage to a player. So that's my official stance on Frog Hemoth, but I think it is going to be decent in standard, and it's obviously good in limited. Like just a 5 mana 4/4 trample haste is good in limited, let alone one that can make itself bigger and gain you some life.
Yeah. We need Questing Beast to leave first. It's again like the adult gold dragon. Like Questing Beast is kind of the card that immediately trumps this. Once that leaves, like remember that this card exists if you're looking for this type of ability in green.
For sure. Yeah, which it leaves in 3 months. So
yeah, not too far away for those who are waiting for a powered down standard format. So tell us about your. Yes.
Goldspan Dragon does stick around, right? Kaldheim doesn't rotate. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You still have a year on that, unfortunately.
Yeah. That'll be 15 months.
Okay, you tell us about your next card. I cannot read this card, so you're gonna have to tell me what it does.
Yeah, I do not speak lasagna either. This is Trickster's Talisman. The equipped creature gets +1/+1, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice Trickster's Talisman to create a token that is a copy of the creature. And it equips for 2. So this is a very powerful pseudo short sword. Like it costs 1 more to equip, but like if you put this on something big or a flyer, when you hit them, you can sack the Talisman to make another copy of the creature, which is like insane to me. I think this card's really strong. I think it'll be very good in limited. You'll probably want to play multiple copies of it. And like if you're in blue and like you want a short sword, which a lot of limited decks want a short sword, you're going to go with the one that can let you potentially make extra copies of the creature when it hits your opponent. Will, how do you feel about this card?
Yeah, as you said, this feels like a card that plays a lot better than it reads off the top. Once you actually like make a token off of this card, it's probably going to feel like the best thing you've ever done in Magic. For such a low cost. So I definitely I can see why this is an uncommon for the limited environment, and I'm really curious. It's just interesting to see a short sword in blue, right? Which kind of makes it to where you really need to pay attention reading the card to make sure you understand what's doing. But yeah, I would absolutely not want to see this on my opponent's side of the field in limited.
Yeah, I would not, and I would love to see this on my side of the field in limited. But speaking of things that you don't want to see on your opponent's side of the field in limited, tell us about Sphere of Annihilation.
Yeah, so white gets the unconditional sweepers. Black gets sweepers with a condition, and this is a very interesting iteration on that. So I imagine the Sphere of Annihilation is like something like well known for D&D players, but this is a black artifact, 1 black and then X, and it's a rare. Sphere of Annihilation enters the battlefield with X void counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile Sphere of Annihilation all creatures and planeswalkers with mana value less than or equal to the number of void counters on it, and all creatures and planeswalker cards in graveyards with mana value less than or equal to the number of void counters on it. So you have to pay the mana, and it has to sell on the field for 1 turn. But if your opponent cannot deal with it, or like, get rid of all their board, or get value out of what they have that's about to go, Spear of Annihilation exiles everything of that X or less. I'm curious if having it be on the field for a turn, obviously weakens the card. But if it goes off, it's a very powerful sweeper effect, and the being delayed a turn sucks, but you get extra sweeper power based on that. I think that this will just be a standard only card, but I definitely think that this is going to be a brawl card. Lots of people are going to play this in brawl, and just very curious to see if having to take that 1 turn off makes the card constructed playable. How do you feel about that?
I don't think the turn-off is that big of a deal. I think that, like your opponent being able to answer it is going to suck. But I think this card's fine. It's also worth noting, you just play this for 1 black and get rid of all tokens on the next turn. I think this card's fine. I think it's the kind of thing where it might see some modern sideboard play. It's hard to tell, because there's a lot of effects that are a lot like this, and I think better players than me will figure out which one is the best one.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. I definitely think this doesn't get out of standard, but honestly, probably since this is such a powerful sweeper and is so flexible on different turns of the game, that I imagine that this will probably be a good sweeper to keep in mind for the standard format.
Yeah, I think for sure.
All right, why don't you tell us about your next card? Another one that I'm not able to read, but looks very close to the one that you talked about before. Yeah,
so this is Reaper's Talisman, or Talisman of the Reaper, another one that's in Italian. This is a black. Whenever this creature attacks, or whenever equipped creature attacks, it gets Death Touch until end of turn. And whenever it attacks alone, it drains the defending player for 2 life, and you gain 2 life. So, and then it equips for 2. I think this card's sneaky good, right? The Death Touch is obviously great. It's probably worth it on its own for that. But then if it attacks by itself, which often it will be anyway, you just slap this on a 1/1. It swings, it hits them for 3, and you gain 2 every turn. And I mean, if they block it, then that's great. You just get to trade with their creature, and then you can put this onto another 1/1. So the better your deck is at making little tokens, I think the better this card's going to be. But I think this card definitely deserves a slot in most black limited decks.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it just sits on the field, and then every creature that you draw has the opportunity to put the hurt on your opponent's life total. Yeah, that's definitely something that I would want to try to remove as soon as possible, because then it's like it doesn't matter which card you're drawing. Like every creature is going to hit you for at least a little bit. A 4-point life swing, that's something scary to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this card is definitely worth considering, at least. Maybe, probably not for constructed, but definitely for limited.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you've got this next card.
Yes. Okay. Cave of the Frost Dragon. As like one of the rare land cycles that we're getting in this set are special creature lands. So they are kind of reminiscent of the Scars of Mirrodin and Kaladesh fast lands, where you want to play them as early as possible, or else they come into play tapped. But they're monocolored, and then they have the ability to turn into a creature. I think all of them have a constructed playability. I don't think any of them are like super bad, but I think that this one is going to be the best because of flying. So this is the white one, Cave of the Frost Dragon, a rare land. If you control 2 or more other lands, Cave of the Frost Dragon enters the battlefield tapped. So you want to play it as your first or second land of the game. taps for white mana, and then you can pay 5 mana to have Cave of the Frost Dragon become a 3/4 white dragon creature with flying until end of turn. It's still a land. I don't think that it is controversial to say that Celestial Colonnade is the best out of the world weight creature lands, basically because of the stats that creature gets. It's a 4/4 flying vigilance. Or maybe not vigilance, but I think this one having flying over all of the other creature lands is going to put it in the tier above all of those. We know how much a effect like this is valued in like a hard control deck, and this is the one I think is going to have the most constructed application. How do you feel about this as a creature land?
I actually disagree with you. I think all of them are good. I'll go ahead and put that out there first. And I think Cave of the Frost Dragon is definitely strong. I think in those hard control decks, the thing about the reason Celestial Colonnade saw that much play was because it was just in the best colors for that at the time, and not necessarily much about the creature. Like if your goal is to have your opponent not have any creatures anyway, which is typically the goal with hard control deck, why would you pick a 4/4 over something that's a 3/3 but then gets a counter every time it attacks? Aka Raging Ravine, and it's because you're already in the colors that let you play Celestial Colonnade. I would argue that Raging Ravine is the best of that cycle, although Creeping Tar Pit is also very good. That's not to say that Celestial Colonnade's bad, but I think in terms of if any of these cards see play in Standard, which I think they will, like the comes in tapped unless you control two or more other, or unless if you control two or more other lands is like leagues better than just coming in tapped period and being able to tap for 2 colors. I think Cave of the Frost Dragon is going to be good, but I think Den of the Bugbear, which is the red one, it costs 1 less to activate, and it's a 3/2, and when it attacks, you also get an attacking 1/1. That one is probably going to be the best for hard control decks, because if you can run your opponent out of creatures, leaving behind a permanent 1/1 and hitting for the same amount of damage as Cave of the Frost Dragon is really going to be what gets you there.
Man, I don't know. 3/2 is just so fragile, and no evasion. It just sits on the ground. I totally hear you, and I think that it has the necessary power level for constructed, but like it's just a 3/2 with no evasion. Like that's so easy to deal with. But I guess we'll just have to see. I think that control decks will probably want to be looking at all of the creature lands and kind of based on the meta decide what they want. I can definitely see sometimes where you would really want the red one over the white one. But I do think the white one's the one that I'm going to look at first if I'm looking for this effect.
That's fair, yeah. I think I like the red one and the black one the best, speaking of which.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Hive of...
let's move on to your next one.
This is Hive of the Eye Tyrant. This is a land. If you control 2 or more other lands, it enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for black, or you can pay 3 and a black, which is 1 cheaper than the last one. Until end of turn, Hive of the Eye Tyrant becomes a 3/3 black beholder creature token with menace, and whenever this creature attacks, exile a target card from defending player's graveyard. It's still a land. I think the thing that's cool about this mostly is... So I really love beholders. I think they're really neat. I think they're one of the coolest creatures in like D&D. And I like this effect fine. Like exiling a card from a graveyard is relevant. Menace is relevant as well. Probably not quite as good as flying, but still pretty good. And it costs 1 less to activate, so you get to hit them for 3, you get to exile something from their yard. I think this will be good in like mono black devotion decks, just as an extra way to hit in. They won't have to play the Snowman land anymore. I think really like what these are going to be showing out in are decks that are playing the Snowman land right now, but would rather have something more efficient.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it is. There are definitely opportunities where exiling a card from your opponent's graveyard matters. That's true, and a 3/3 is not an insignificant creature on the field. I think going up to 3 toughness from the 2 of the red one is definitely worth something, and it's just it's flavored as beholders, which is another iconic Magic. It's another iconic D&D monster type.
Definitely,
and I know people are going to like this card just because it has that beholder text on it. So yeah, this is another one. I would not be surprised at all if this sees constructed standard play.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree. So you've got this next one. This is one I did not expect you to pick. Why don't you tell us about Demi Lich?
This might be our last card. I think this is my last card. But yeah, so Demi Lich. It's basically just this spooky, crystal skull thing with spectral arms. I do not know how this card is going to play out, but just the words that are printed on it make me think that this is something worth looking at. It is 4 blue mana, no generic, 4 mana value of 4 blue mana. Creature, skeleton, wizard. It's a mythic. It's a 4/3, and this spell costs 1 blue less to cast for each instant and sorcery card you've cast this turn. So if you're playing a deck that likes to kind of cycle cards quite a bit, then you can play this for free, and those cards don't have to be blue. So you can like Manamorphose or like the red 1 mana cards that cycle, like Opt. You can play all of those cards, and then this just becomes free. Once it gets into play, it does just sit there. It's a 4/3 with it doesn't have flying or anything. But if you're able to attack with this, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, copy it, you may cast the copy. So basically you get Snapcaster Mage on attack, and it doesn't even exile the card when you do it. That text right there makes me think that this is something that we need to like keep in mind for these heavy spell decks. The fact that you can a Snapcaster Mage on attack is pretty good game if you can get it going.
Yeah.
And there is one more thing going on with this card. You may cast Demi Lich from your graveyard by exiling 4 instant and or sorcery cards from your graveyard in addition to paying its other cost. So like this, if you're playing a ton of instants and sorceries, this can even come back from the graveyard. It's recursible. There's so much going on with this card that's really hard to kind of picture how it's going to play in the game of Magic, but just based on what's written on the card, it seems like if you can get this going, there's a ton of power, and I want to see how like the most efficient way to play this card in a standard context. I'm really curious to see what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I think between being able to cast it from your graveyard and just in Historic having access to Opt and Faithless Looting and all that stuff, this card can't not see play. It's too efficient. Even if it just gets bolted, you're going to bring it back from your graveyard. This card worries me. That's how strong I think this card is. I don't know if Standard has the tools to break it, but I think Historic definitely does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could definitely see this being a Brawl card too for Standard Brawl, just like mono blue, just like cantripping, stuff like that. And you just get so much value after, from just being able to play this for free, and then plus your commander tax, and just try.
This isn't legendary.
Oh, it's not. Oh, you're right. It looks like it ought to be, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
Okay, well, thank you for keeping me honest. You cannot play this as a commander. But any deck like that is going to want a ton of this. Like Talrand will want this, and other decks like that. So yeah, just very curious to see how this is going to play. It's just such a interesting, cool card that I want to see it in action.
Yes. So one final card we've got here, and this is the only other dungeon card that we're talking about. This is Yuan-Ti Malison, and I like the Yuan-Ti. I think they're cool. This is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 rare Snake Rogue. It can't be blocked as long as it's attacking alone. It seems like Exalted is a bit of a sub-theme in this set. And whenever Yuan-Ti Malison deals combat damage to a player, venture into the dungeon. So swinging with this by itself is cool. It's not going to be super hard to do, especially if you're in a more controlling sort of deck. And every time you hit them, you get to enter the dungeon. And I think the most common thing you'll be doing is just going up the tree that lets you, like, scry 1, gain a life, draw a card, etc. Just eventually drawing a card off of a 2-mana 2/1 unblockable is pretty fine. So I think this card will obviously be very good in Limited when you can get it, but it'll be fine in Standard, too. I think it might see a little bit of play if that Enter the Dungeon deck ever ends up getting off the ground. How do you feel about Yuan-Ti Malison?
Yeah, I'm glad that you picked this card because, I'm glad I'm taking another look at this card. Like, The rate is good. If you're playing like a more controlling deck, and this is like one of your few creatures, and you're kind of just planning on always attacking with this alone, it's a 2 mana 2/1 that is most of the time unblockable, and you get extra value when it deals combat damage. The fact that you get extra value, even though it's tied to the dungeon mechanic, which is a little awkward, but you are getting some sort of value on doing the combat damage, and some of those times you'll be getting extra value if you like complete a dungeon. It just seems like a good rate for a card if you just want to play it and just chip away at your opponent's life total while you're doing something else. You're playing counter spells or something like that. So I could definitely see a standard deck that is more controlling and uses this, and then maybe like a man lands or a creature lands as well to chip away at your opponent's life totals. So yeah, this just seems very efficient and a good way. I wouldn't really worry too much about trying to put this into like a dungeon deck. Just use this and just consider it as extra gravy on top of just an unblockable 2 damage every turn.
Definitely, yeah. I think that is absolutely the appropriate way to evaluate this card. So with that, those are our thoughts on Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Will, how excited are you overall for this set?
I am very curious to see, and I feel like I've said this over and over again, I'm very curious to see how the set plays out. This is taking the place of a core set, which is normally a more powered down experience for newer players, and as a way to get staple cards printed into the standard environment. They're doing something very different this time, and I like that. But I was kind of expecting the set to kind of maybe be a little lower on the power level, which it kind of seems to in terms of what the cards do, but not so much in the complexity. So I'm very curious to see how this deck or how this set is going to play out as a whole. I have high hopes, but there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of moving parts that could fall apart. Maybe venturing into the dungeon, it plays a lot clunkier than it feels like it does on the sets. Maybe all of the rolling a d20, those cards are just so RNG they aren't worth playing. That would really be unfortunate if that were the case. So I am hopeful. There's a lot of cool stuff happening, but also there's a lot of stuff that I am a bit worried about. But I'm holding out hope, and I am excited to play the set when it comes out. Overall, how do you feel about the set, Fred?
Yeah, so while I disagree with like the RNG, I don't like the dungeon mechanic very much either. I think there are some very, very cool cards in this set. Icing Death and just some fun random limited cards. So I am optimistic despite my reservations about a couple of the core mechanics of the set. I will say I'm a lot less pessimistic than I was going into the set because, I'm not attached to D&D lore at all. So I wasn't like super excited about the way that would be represented in cards because I didn't have any attachment to it beforehand, but like I'm really happy with the way that it came out. I think there's a lot of stuff here that's like enjoyable, even though I'm not into D&D lore. So I'm optimistic for the set. I'm definitely excited to play some drafts of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the set will be coming out on Magic Arena in a couple of days. So when you'll hear back from us once we've played the set a little bit, and maybe we could give a little update on how we feel this stuff plays in card form. But yeah, lots of good stuff to optimistically or what's the term I'm looking for, to hesitate. Okay, never mind. Okay,
cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. Yes. That's exactly what I was trying to say. But okay. So looking forward to the set. But let's go ahead and move on to our scoop step. And we have a great milestone that we want to commemorate here on this episode. This is officially the first episode that we are recording in year 2 of our podcast Gut Shot. We have gone 1 year making this podcast. Our first episode was posted online on July 1st of 2020, and man, we finally made it. Like, this is, I feel like we really stuck to it. We made something that we can be proud of, and I'm just really glad we were able to do this. How do you feel about Gut Shot being 1 year old?
I love it. I'm excited to see it get to at least 2 years, 3 years, and just keep going. I'm really loving this podcast. It's the highlight of my week. I love bringing my bad Magic opinions to the world and seeing how they react. And I love getting to hang out with you every week and just sort of shoot the shit. I'm really happy that Gutshot is where it is. I'm really excited for its future, and I've enjoyed it so far. What would you say your favorite episodes of Gutshot have been?
This was super indulgent of us, but Memory Jar, when an early one where we just talked about our favorite moments in Magic, both with each other and without each other. Like being able to look back and talk about how important Magic was to me and those moments that will always stick out. It was nice to be able to share those with you and to our audience. And we also have a couple of other bangers. The Political Compass one is one that I'm very proud of for a number of ways. We created our own set boosters. That one was a
that
lot
one
of
was
fun.
really fun, yeah. I forgot
Yeah,
about
exactly.
that one.
We have a lot of great podcasts that I am proud of and wish more people would listen to. What are your favorites, Fred?
That sounded a little bitter. I do too. It's just funny. I think my favorites are definitely Staple Cards. I think is easily my favorite episode we've made. It was just so fun to try to figure out, like, reverse engineer what each other were talking about from the cards combined together. So I love Staple Cards. That was a great one. I also like the Political Compass one. I would say I really enjoyed, the Set Boosters one I had forgotten about until you mentioned it, but that was one of my favorites as well. And then our episode about whether Ugin was the problem, that we got our first paragraph-long hate comment on. That one was a milestone and definitely one of my favorites as well. So I would say that those are my favorites. I think the Set Boosters one is like the favorite between the two of us.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. So if you want to delve into the Gutshot back catalog, that's a great one to search up. It's a one for the ages. One thing that I love about what we've been doing here is that I feel that my skills as a podcaster have really leveled up quite a bit since we started this, both learning to record audio, learning how to deal with all the issues that not knowing how to properly record audio, does. We had a couple of missteps, mistakes made that I feel that I've learned from. My graphic design skills, making thumbnails for this podcast, I've really feel that I've leveled up there, and I just feel like this podcast has really enriched my life and given me something to look forward to, something to work on, and something that I can really be proud of. And I'm just really grateful for this podcast for allowing me to have that opportunity.
Yeah, likewise. I'm just really happy we did this, and I'm looking forward to years of Gutshot ahead.
Right. Yeah. There's lots of exciting stuff to look forward to in the future. We're going to do all the great things that you know and love. I'm sure we'll evolve over time. We'll incorporate new things. Things will change. Some things will stay the same. But you can always count on Gutshot for being the home of the hottest takes for Magic the Gathering. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
And let us know in the comments what your favorite episode of Gutshot is. Let us know who your favorite Gutshot host is.
For sure. Yeah, let's do like a like if you like Frederick, and comment if you like aggro rhetoric. I think that will be a good one. Let's get that going in the comments. And honestly, if you like don't like any of our podcast, if you hated this episode, leave a comment and tell us that too, because we would love to hear that, and we will read your comment on air.
We will, yeah, whatever it says, as long as it doesn't have personal information.
Yeah, for sure. And we might add a snarky tone to it. So just so you know, keep that in mind. You're asking for it.
But with that, thank you for listening to this very special first anniversary AFR spoiler episode of Gutshot. You can follow me on social media. Will is at Aggro Rhetoric on Twitter, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Gutshot Pod. But don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell if you're listening to this here on YouTube.
Yes, do all the engagement and call to action stuff. This has been Gutshot, finally leveling up to level 2, and we'll see you next time.